6 San Pablo Affordable Housing Project. Can we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair Moss, Planning Commission. So this is a affordable housing project for a study session today. In terms of background, this property was purchased by the redevelopment agency, and as part of its dissolution, it was transferred to the city to be developed in accordance with the redevelopment plan. And in 2012, the council approved a RFQ/P for the redevelopment of the site as 100% affordable housing, and subsequently selected EAH Housing as the developer of the property. In 2014, earlier this year, an ERN was approved by the council with the following provisions. That it be an 87-unit rental housing for low and very low-income households. The project should maintain an average unit size of a little over 1,000 square feet. There should be an average of 2.3 bedrooms per unit, and there should be a set-aside of 11 units for special needs population, and there should be project amenities to support family-oriented housing, such as community space, outdoor courtyard and landscape spaces, and commercial space fronting San Pablo Avenue. So this is the site. As you know, this is the former location of the Golden Gate Lock and Key building, which was demolished a couple of years ago with the approval of the council. And this is the site plan. As you can see, the site is split between the two cities of Oakland and Emeryville. Some of us are quite used to this happening on our boundaries. About 63% is Emeryville, and the rest is Oakland. Oakland has ceded jurisdiction to Emeryville regarding both planning permits as well as building permits. We have an MOU to that effect. Oakland would be consulted and kept apprised of the developments and the progress that this project makes, and Oakland would also be consulted when there are public improvements along the streets. So this is the ground floor, just to get you oriented. So you have San Pablo here, and you have MacArthur up here. So fronting San Pablo, you have about a little over 6,000 square feet of retail/commercial space. The lobby to the building occurs at the corner here, and this is the leasing office. There are townhomes along MacArthur, which are in sort of yellow, and the entry to the garage, there's only one entry, which occurs off 37th Street. It is a two-story, it's a 2+3 or 2+4 in terms of 2 levels of parking, and above that you have the residential. So this is the 3rd floor, and as you can see, you have a courtyard and you have units surrounding it. There is a feature of an overlook, and this you can see a little bit more in the elevations in terms of how that looks. Each floor, including this one, has a laundry that is in green, and the 3rd floor also has music and teen room. There's a lounge along right here on the 3rd floor as well. This would be the 4th and the 5th floor. Again, like I mentioned, there is laundry on each floor, and the 4th and the 5th also have a small storage area. The 6th floor, again, you have the laundry and the storage, and there is an added element of the sky deck. Again, you can see this better in the elevations. In terms of unit mix and size, this is how it breaks down, and the average size of the overall project does comply with the ERN, and so it's between studios and 4 bedrooms. This is the cross sections. As you can see, there are 2 levels of parking with 4 levels of residential development above it, around a courtyard. The maximum height reached by this project is 73 feet. These are some of the San Pablo this is San Pablo Avenue elevation, and I'm just going to skim through them because I know that the applicant has detailed presentations of various colors and materials, and we have also refined subsequently from what you have in your package. So this is the 37th Street elevation, and this is the garage entrance right here and right here. And this is the MacArthur Boulevard elevation, the MacArthur being here. And this is the landscape plan. There are some existing trees along San Pablo in green, which would remain, and there will be some new trees along MacArthur as well. The property has a peculiar leg, which is right here. which is being proposed at this point as a dog park, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later on. And this is the courtyard landscape plan, and this is the sky deck plan in terms of seating and the lounge facilities that the project provides. In terms of conformity to planning regulations, this is a district which has a number of zones. The basic zone is MURS, and there are 3 overlay zones. That's the neighborhood retail overlay, transit hub overlay, and the pedestrian priority overlay. In terms of use classification, this is a multi-unit residential use, which is allowed by right in MURS. The commercial uses as yet have not been finalized, but the potential uses that they're looking at include retail, food establishment, and also space for art galleries. The site is over 1 acre, so the entire project does require a use permit, and the overlay zones do not modify this. The effect of the overlay zone is to invoke the provisions in the design guidelines. Residential density, this lies under the base density of 28 units per acre with a bonus to 100 units per acre. What they're proposing is the base density, lower than the base density, which comes to 77, a little over 77 units per acre. FAR, again, they are in the base 2.0 zone, which can be increased with a bonus to 3, and it's below the base FAR. The height, the base height here is 55 feet, which can be increased with bonuses to 75 feet. The maximum project height here is 73 feet, so that calculates the bonus points requirements to 90 points. So the project will need to acquire or figure out how the 90 points can be attained. So like I said, the applicant has not yet identified potential source of bonus points at the time of the writing of the staff report, but I believe the applicant has some suggestions that he will be expressing to you tonight. But, you know, I'm sure you are familiar with the various categories of bonus categories, and some of those are energy efficiency, providing public open space, family-friendly housing, neighborhood centers regarding there are certain requirements for ground floor uses, which can qualify you for bonus points. As this is a 100% affordable housing project, it could also potentially qualify for points under the category of flexible public benefit. This is an overriding category under which the commission, if it so pleases, can grant bonus points for currently undefined public benefit proposed by the applicant that is significant and substantially beyond normal requirements. Parking. So for vehicular parking, there are two factors that are applicable for this site. One, that the fact that it is low-income housing, that qualifies or that reduces the demand by half. In addition, it is also in the transit overlay zone, which further reduce all required parking by 50%. So this calculates to the requirement to 37 to 47 spaces only. The proposed residential parking is 115, so they are above the required minimum. So this is permitted, provided that certain findings are made for the use permit. And these are essentially findings which ensure where the applicant gives you documentation and rationale for saying why extra parking is required, and you feel confident that it will not result in over-reliance on auto as means of transport. In terms of the commercial parking requirements, as I said, the tenants have not yet been identified, so it is not possible to kind of come up with a parking number. However, the proposed space is a little over 1,000 square feet, and local serving commercial uses of 5,000 or less in the neighborhood retail overlay zone does not trigger any parking requirements. Bicycle parking, the required is 1 short-term and 87 long-term, and they provide a lot more than the minimum requirement. So the project was reviewed by staff in what we call the DCC meeting. There was a discussion of a design treatment fronting San Pablo Avenue and the need to ensure that it did not create pockets of unsecured space that may not be fully visible. The applicant, myself, Catherine Furpo, have been talking with the police, Police Sergeant Fran Doyer, and they are still working on how to figuring out how best to have the San Pablo facade so that it can be secured and yet not feel gated. So that is sort of a work in progress. There was some discussion regarding existing trees and need for the project to comply with structural soil requirements for installation of the new street trees. It was noted that all 3 frontages will require new curb, gutter, and sidewalk. A community meeting was held last month at City Hall. About 9 people attended the meeting. A resident living adjacent to the dog park that I had pointed out, that little sliver along MacArthur, she lives right adjacent to that, and she expressed her comment or concern that she did not like this feature in the project. There was a concern regarding shortage of parking in the neighborhood in general. And a comment was made that the proposal resembled a gated community and the design would not address security issues in the neighborhood streets. In terms of environmental review, we will be doing a traffic report as well as visual simulations for the project, and this will be used to determine whether the project qualifies for an infill exemption or any further environmental work is necessary. In terms of permits that will be required, there will be a conditional use for the fact that the project, the site is over 1 acre for height because it requires bonus height, and for parking that exceeds the maximum allowed. Depending on what commercial uses get identified, they may potentially also need a use permit. And the other permit would be design review for new construction. Some of the issues for the commission to consider for which we are seeking your comments is regarding the bonus points. Like I'd mentioned, the project requires 90 bonus points. What categories of public benefits would the commission prefer to see in this project to earn such points? Does the commission feel that these points can be granted under the flexible public benefit for the provision of low and very low income housing as a public benefit that is significant and beyond normal requirements? The second issue that we want your input on specifically is regarding dog park and landscaping. Does the commission think that the dog park is an acceptable feature for the project? If not, what would the commission like to see in its place? And does the commission have suggestions for the plant palette for this project? Unit mix, as you know, I always like to check in with the commission regarding both the unit size as well as the unit mix and whether that is acceptable or not. Parking, does the commission feel that the required parking findings can be made for providing parking that exceeds the maximum number of spaces allowed? So that concludes my presentation, and like I mentioned, we look forward to getting your input on bonus elements, the dog park, unit mix, parking, and of course any other issues that you might think pertinent to this project. So that concludes my presentation. I'm here for questions. If not, then the applicant has a presentation as well.
Does anyone have any questions of staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. We are told that the applicant is on his way. He was not aware that the agenda was going to be reordered, so he was planning to get here at about 7:15. So presumably he'll be here shortly.
Sorry about that. I kind of wondered when I saw you guys scrambling if I kind of threw a fly in the ointment.
So I'm going to suggest, since we might have 10 minutes, do we want to hear the staff presentation on one of the following items at this time? Because I don't.
Is that appropriate, or would that be confusing?
Well,
Go back to our tabled item of 3706 San Pablo Avenue Affordable Housing Project. So we have already had the staff report, so we will now invite the applicant up to give us a presentation.
And I want to give him my apologies for moving the item up on the agenda without you knowing.
Well, I want to apologize for not being here at the start of the meeting. That's on me. So, while Amiru's setting up the presentation, I want to say that we have had a lot of meetings with city staff about garbage and recycling, about public art, about police service and fire, planning and building. We've met with the housing committee, and we've had our neighborhood community meeting as well, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback for the proposed project as it currently stands, and we're looking forward to your comments as well. So Jessica Music here from KTGY is our architect, and she will present our proposal. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. As Felix said, I'm Jessica Music. I'm with KTGY. We prepared a presentation tonight, and Miru probably touched on most of this. So we'll try and go quickly and kind of open it up to your questions and comments. And I'm going to breeze past some of this stuff. This is an introduction to EAH, which Felix has already given you. Apologize, it looks like there's a slight delay on my clicking and flipping through the slides, so I'll try and go a little bit slower. Okay, so site context, everybody I think knows where in the world our project site is. Is this better?
You need to speak into it.
Okay. So our site is bordered by West MacArthur Boulevard, San Pablo, and 37th Street. This slide basically shows our project site. Basically, up at the corner of West MacArthur and San Pablo, we have the leasing amenity space, and then stretching down along San Pablo, we have retail space, and that's about 6,100 square feet of retail space. Off of 37th, we have the vehicular entry into the project. The entry point that you see kind of on the bottom right-hand side of the slide accesses the lower level of garage parking, and then the vehicular entry that you see actually closer to San Pablo accesses an upper level of garage parking. Because our retail space actually is 22 feet tall, and that's from finished floor to the top of the podium deck, we have volume to basically have that extra level of garage parking and provide adequate parking for the project. Along West MacArthur, there are townhome liner units that screen that garage, and then along the 37th Street edge, we'll have decorative art and planting that helps screen that garage. The entire building sits about 10 feet back from basically our Oakland neighbors. And as we move through the building diagrams, you'll see that the actual building massing sets back even further from that property line. All in all, this level of the project provides 55 parking spaces and 3 residential units. This is an enlarged view of the leasing space in the project, and that leasing space will include a reception, lobby, offices that function for the project staff, a homework room, an enlarged club room, fitness rooms, restrooms. That club room will have a connection to the lobby, and that fitness space, has eyes on it from the small office that you see off of the elevator lobby, and then the homework room that'll be open to residents and the young students and stuff that live in this project, and they'll be monitored by management staff. 2 entries at this area. The entry off of San Pablo and West MacArthur on the corner, and these are the doors that you see here. And then a secondary entry for residents that allows residents to come straight into this elevator lobby and straight up to their units, as well as access to that lower level of garage. This is a view of the second level of residential parking, and you can see the speed ramp that takes you directly up from 37th Street. And then you can see the upper level of the townhome units that line West MacArthur. This is the view of the podium deck, and you can see the units lining the street along 37th, turning the corner, and a small active adult overlook that breaks the facade along San Pablo, and then units continuing around West MacArthur. All of the units are organized around a large central courtyard, and that courtyard will have amenities that serve the families that live here, such as a tot lot, and just kind of this is definitely our more active zone. We're showing things like a fun gaming chess center and active seating and areas for young kids to ride tricycles and things. Setting back off of our Oakland neighbors, we have our Zen Garden, and this is supposed to be more of a quiet, more passive zone for residents. And then you can see how the building sets actually back from our podium edge 20 feet, and then basically our Oakland neighbor is 10 feet further from that for a total of 30 feet. Also located at this level is a teen music room and another lounge space for residents, as well as community laundry services at every level. The rest of the levels basically 2 through 4, are very, very typical and very similar. And as we move to our uppermost level, we have a sky deck located in the south east quadrant of the building. And it's almost 2,300 square feet. And that's basically, we've removed units in this zone to include this space. In this area, we felt like provided a nice relief to our Oakland neighbors, as well as just it was a nice opportunity to get sun exposure onto this space. And this area will be programmed with barbecues and seating areas, and it's just another kind of hangout space for residents. This is just a quick summary of kind of our project statistics. All in all, we're 87 residential units, totaling for 199 actual bedrooms. Units range from 630 square feet for a studio unit up to 1,575 square feet for our 4-bedroom townhomes that line West MacArthur. And the majority of our units are 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom flats. Parking at each level, we have 55 stalls at the ground level and then 60 stalls at the second. Total interior amenity space is close to 6,200 square feet. And again, that's comprised of the lounge, the fitness center, and the fitness room, everything like that. The exterior amenity space totals about 17,000 square feet, and I think just an abundant amount of outdoor relief area for the families that live here. These are some conceptual sections through the project. Section C is basically taken from the San Pablo Street edge, kind of through the project to our Oakland neighbor. You can see the volume of the retail space and then the 4 levels of units above, as well as the large family courtyard. And then you can also see how the parking works, as well as the relief to our Oakland neighbor. The garage wall setting back 10 feet from that property line, and then the majority of the building massing setting back 30 feet from that property line. This bottom section is actually taken from West MacArthur back to 37th Street, and you can see how the sky deck notches into the building. This is a view of the project, basically standing at the corner of 37th Street and San Pablo. This gives you a view of the corner of the retail space, as well as the 2 garage entry points along 37th Street, and then starts to kind of represent the 4-story massing above. The project has a really pretty rich material palette. What you're seeing down here at the base is a lap siding and in different different plaster treatments. Up above, you'll see a brick veneer, and again, plaster and hardy between the windows. We're using large glazing along all of the street edges, and also interesting window breakups. And then this is a view of the 37th Street edge. And you can see the decorative art screens that we're using to basically, turn this garage edge into just an interesting art opportunity. And right now, those screens are basically laser cut, showing some decorative fenestration, but it can really be anything. This is just a concept and idea at this standpoint, and EAH will continue to work with artists in the community to develop that concept. This view also shows the relief along our eastern edge, and it shows how the building steps back from the podium edge and as well as the Oakland neighbors. And this also shows the relief in the massing up above where the sky deck is located. And then this is a view standing on West MacArthur looking back towards San Pablo. So this area where my mouse is hovering is actually the leasing entry. And you're looking down West MacArthur towards the townhomes that line this edge of the garage. So it's important for us that the architectural treatment kind of continue all the way around the building. And so you'll see that brick veneer wraps not only San Pablo Avenue, but it turns the corners and wraps onto West MacArthur and 37th. We've used these elevator lobbies as a transition point for that building material, and we transitioned to something just a little bit simpler, more of the plaster and more of the hardy panel. And this is a view standing on West MacArthur, looking back towards San Pablo. And again, you can see the townhome liner units on the lower left-hand corner, and the massing above, as well as the building relief as the building massing steps back from the Oakland property line. And I think that actually concludes our presentation. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
I have a question. So the hardy panel, is this the faux wood hardy plank that you're planning on? So
it's not actually a faux wood. It's actually we call hardy is a manufacturer. It's a lap siding. It's a fiber cement board. We would suggest that we use a smooth panel, no fake wood grains or anything in it, trying to stay more contemporary and kind of just honestly more honest with the material. So it's a painted product.
So the rendering that's the main rendering, it looks like it's Ipe rain screen or something along those lines.
It is, and I would say that rendering is from our RFP, the actual original proposal that the project has developed since then, and we're suggesting a hardy panel instead.
And the only other question I have is, this may just be a situation where you're duplicating the same unit plan in different conditions, but it looks like you've got a unit plan with, one side sort of has the windows and the living room on it, and the other side has the kitchen and the entry and no windows and a refrigerator against that wall. And that, I see where that runs in the corridors or, double loaded portions of the exit balcony. But then when it opens up to the courtyard, those same plans are shown without any windows facing the courtyard. And it looks like you've got the exiting necessary to allow for actual openings in those walls. Is that just a situation of dropping in the same plan over and over and not modifying it yet for specific conditions?
Potentially, and maybe go back to the building plan and kind of see what you're referencing.
See it there you can see it where, you know, where there's two units facing each other, you know, in a basically corridor type situation. That, you know, I can understand the, you know, seeing that there's no windows and the refrigerator against that wall, et cetera.
Correct.
But then when you come into those units facing the courtyard, the same plan is being used with the no window there and the refrigerator facing the.
Yeah, that is deliberate. There's some efficiencies when we can use the same unit plans throughout the building and not have too many variations. So that is a deliberate effort, and we're trying to be mindful of that. This area also is an exit balcony, and having openings onto that requires certain code implications to those windows that we haven't explored yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think my understanding is if you've got two stairways each way and no dead-end corridor, you can have openings, even non-rated openings in those situations. But yeah, it would be good to see some interior courtyard elevations, because right now you don't have any windows facing the courtyard on those sides. It just seems.
Correct.
I have a question, if I may. Can you describe, there is a extra parking over the requirement. Can you talk about your reasons why?
Yeah, I'm going to let Felix address that.
I'll address, the parking. So our property management, right here, you know, even in our RFP response, we've always been very concerned about the parking count. We believe that, you know, each one of our units should have one parking stall, and we have the 6,000 square feet of commercial space, which in our conversation with potential tenants said parking was a critical piece of locating at that place. We recognize that, you know, Emeryville has a 50% reduction for affordable housing, as well as a 50% for the transit overlay. But I don't think they should be double counted to a quarter of the, you know, otherwise normal requirement. So if we use just the 50% reduction, we're actually fairly close. Once you add in some of the commercial parking, the guest parking, we have 2 stalls that we're going to reserve for car share stalls. It comes pretty close to the 115 that we have. The neighbors, you know, at the community meeting have expressed that street parking is extremely limited due to the frequent overnight street cleaning on MacArthur that prohibits people from parking there overnight. So they have expressed deep concern about our development overloading the streets. And so, you know, we're developing a parking plan. I'm talking to AZ Transit right now about easy passes for our residents. We're following all of those things, and we're bike parking above our requirements here as well. So we want to make sure it's a transit-friendly development, but at the same time, make sure we also provide enough parking for our residents and the commercial use.
And the dog park, I assume it'll be fenced, and would it be accessible for the community or only the?
So that is another discussion I'm going to have with the immediate neighbors next week. I'm going to meet with them separately. They have expressed some concern about having the one particular neighbor who is immediately next to that strip has expressed concern about having a dog run there. So we're going to sit down and talk about what some other viable options are. And right now, many things are on the table. Since we have a gated community, in essence, where people will have electronic keys to get into the building. We can potentially extend those keys to some of our immediate neighbors in the block so that they also can use that particular outdoor ground level space. And we would be able to control some of the hours and the access. But that is on the table right now.
And just staying on that subject real quickly, the idea of this dog run is not something like people would have in their homes where you go to work, you throw the dog out in the dog run, and the dog sits there all day and barks. And they're also using it for the owners, when they're walking their dog, they're obviously going to clean up after their dog immediately. So I think if the neighbor is maybe not understanding that this is a place where people exercise their pets at the moment that they're with them, they clean up after the pets. So a noise issue and a smell issue is really not something as related to people who throw their dog out in their backyard for the whole day and clean up once a week. So I think that's the way I was reading her concerns, and that maybe we just need to translate what this purpose is for that, because dog parks and dog runs are in very high demand in all developments today.
So do you generally have pet-friendly
We do.
buildings?
We have pet-friendly buildings. We limit the size and the number of pets a resident can have, but they would have access throughout the building. So, they could walk them along the courtyard level as well. But this was an area where we would be on the ground. We can have real landscaping that could accommodate that use, and we thought it was a good idea. But we'll keep working that out with the neighbors.
Has there been discussion of other, it is an odd little spot, but have you talked about community gardens and different things like that? Has there been a response to that?
We have thought about community gardens. It's on the north side, but the neighbor who's immediately adjacent was also opposed to a community garden, with the impression that sometimes they're not kept up to the level that they should be. We've had great success with our community gardens in our other properties, so we feel like that, like the dog exercise area would not be a concern per se, but we need to work that out with our neighbor.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the plans correctly. So the two levels of the garage would not be accessible vehicularly from each other, is that correct?
That's correct, and that's a space-saving design. It eliminates a ramp internal to the garage, and it frees up parking stalls.
And then I have another question, which is, does the building code require both elevators? And if so, sort of what's the requirement there?
No, the building code doesn't require both elevators. It's more for convenience. Usually our rule of thumb is we try and provide at least one elevator for every 60 units. This project has 87, so it's kind of right on an in-between state, and so we're providing two.
Right, and our property management team has told me that we should keep the two elevators just in the event of one of the elevators not working. So when it's being serviced or when it's out of service for whatever reason, that the residents have another means of getting up and down because of the size of the project.
As a building manager, I would definitely recommend that.
Cost me more money though.
Yeah.
Well, I question the little planter beds that you have there for the community. About 12 years ago, I put together an affordable family development in Bay Point that your company is currently managing. And I visited it about 4 years ago, and the planters weren't used at all.
I think sometimes it depends on the property and then the property staff. So we had a property in Morgan Hill that just opened recently, and it's it's a senior property, 40 units. There's a group of about 12 residents who go out there on a weekly basis that tend to the 6 beds that are out there, and it's in great shape. So I think some of it has to do with the interest of both the residents and the staff.
Well, I would think senior housing would probably like it very much. But family-friendly housing, the people are too involved in other things to get involved in it.
We do have family projects also that have gardens, and our resource coordinator used it as part of her educational after-school programming. So we've planted herbs there. They're a little bit lower maintenance, but it's a nice feature.
Could you also talk about the Paseo sort of porch, I'm not sure what you'd call it, along San Pablo, and maybe address staff's concerns about
Sure.
that?
You want to start? Or I mean, the the premise was that we create this space that is an indoor-outdoor space that would be utilized by the commercial tenant that could lease the space. And we've gotten some feedback from staff and from the police department that because it's a covered, somewhat obstructed view location, and because of its location and the nature of the current neighborhood, that it could be potentially an issue during certain hours of the day when it's less used. And, you know, we agree with their assessment, and I think in our next iteration, when we come back for the actual entitlements package, we're going to push that facade out. But we're still exploring the options right now, whether we do all of it out, whether we, you know, fence some of it. You know, those are on, you know, we're exploring the options.
So I actually don't really understand that space. So is it sort of an arcade?
It is an arcade, yeah. So the idea was, you know, if we had a cafe, for example, then during, you know, 3 seasons out of the year, you could have an outdoor seating area. But, you know, how you enclose that at night when the cafe is closed is a question. And so, you know, given our trade-offs here at this particular location, I think we're going to take most of that away.
Actually, that's another question I have. So you mentioned a cafe. The space is labeled as retail. I didn't see that it would be ventilated to allow a full-service restaurant. Is that correct?
Right. Right now, that has not been put in, but that was also a comment that if we were to look at long-term viability of the space and the potential that it could become some kind of food restaurant use, that we insert a flue, and I think the architects are going to look into that.
There's a portion of the arcade that looks like it's where right now it's where the entrances to the retail spaces are from, and that it's got walls and it's less open. Is that part of the closing off, or what's the intention there?
These plans don't reflect any of the changes that we propose to make to this arcade. They're reflecting kind of the design that we had originally.
Okay. What was that initial?
It was just to announce the entry, to differentiate kind of the entry of the retail from the rest of the arcade.
Okay.
Also under the overlook.
And it's directly under the adult overlook.
Okay.
So it was just an architectural feature.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the public comment for this item. Was there anyone present who would like to speak on this item? Please come forward to the podium. All right, seeing none, then we will bring this back for discussion. Why don't we start with Commissioner Keller this time?
Okay, I am prepared. Basically, what I really want to express is I really like this design. This is amazing to me. I think this is one of the best designed new apartment buildings I've seen pretty much since I've lived in Emeryville, and I've been here 12 years. I love the limited use of stucco. And when I say the area, going back to that, I mean not only just Emeryville, but I mean in Oakland and in Berkeley. I think this just really harkens back to our historical aesthetic, but yet is still contemporary. It doesn't plagiarize any of our historical. The brick use is reflective, but not copying any of that. The windows, as you mentioned, are just great. Living in a place that has 9-foot high windows, I really value when I walk into my house that I see right out and I see space. Even though I'm living in a small apartment, you know, you have the feeling of space. And I think a lot of the apartments that are built really lack that ability to capture the beauty of our area. It's a great variety outdoor space. I'm just surprised you're just barely over an acre and you have 6 designated outdoor spaces. And I fully support the dog run. I fully support the garden area. Look at the schools in Berkeley that are teaching kids with Alice Waters and, you know, all the healthy foods. So I think that's a crucial, it's a small part, and I think it can be managed. The Zen garden is amazing, the overlook, the sky deck. I mean, within an acre, you've got 6 varieties of really great different outdoor space. So I really commend you on that. The overall community feel of the complex is really there. It definitely does what we're asking this to do, and it's really to tie the community together for those who want to be that way. I'm just amazed at the several varieties of, you have 8 floor plans. You have 87 units, and there's 8 different floor plans, and I think that's just amazing. I love the how you could tie in a kind of contemporary look of the townhouses in this building that isn't totally really contemporary. And to me, it harkens back to a lot of the apartment buildings I like in Portland and how they interact with the street. I think that's just a great job. How your laundry rooms have windows, so people aren't going to feel they're in a dark cave. My laundry room is interior building, and it's not a very pleasant place to be. And I think this is great that it's going to still connect with the community, and people that are folding their clothes there, if that's where they decide to do it, are going to be in a natural light place. The decorative panels on the garages are wonderful, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this project forward first, is because I think those are a great example of garage screening and ventilation and almost public art. And it's done on Oak Walk, maybe not to the effect that it could be, but I think this shows what it can really be, and I really, really like those. I like even as they look. I don't think you have to change them, but I just love the time you put into this, and it's just, for low-income housing, I look at this thinking, okay, if a developer doing low-income housing can really raise the bar, I'm raising the bar for other groups that they need to meet this. That this is just an amazing job. Recommendations I would have is, I think you need bike lockers, and not all over, but I think that needs to be an option to people. I bike, I use a locker. I have a secure place to put my helmet, my gloves, my sunglasses, my bike pump. I park my bike in the same place every day. As a bike commuter, that's very important. It's and you're overparked in cars, so I think you could take a few parking stalls away, put in bike lockers. I've even identified some spaces on your floor plans. And where we live, we have square lockers and we have triangular lockers, which work front to back, and I have some pictures I could share with you on those. I would recommend putting those in. They don't take up a lot of space, but I think some lockers for serious commuters and people who need to secure their products, bike pumps and et cetera, need to have that secure space. Let's see, the addressing of the public comments, I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't address that, but I think we kind of hit on that with the dog run. I really think that that's a viable thing that most people want in their units, and the Bond building down in Jack London Square has one that's similar shape to yours. And I think if you want to open it up to the public, you could put a gate on the Linden Street side that can access to the neighbors, but I don't really see why that's a problem, but I really like that. Parking, again, you're over what we're asking as a city, and I understand the community's concern. I think a lot of the people that are concerned are what I call old school, and they're people who primarily themselves drive and have trouble parking, but what we need to do is build our buildings on the new paradigm and the new way of promoting transit, and I'm glad to hear you're talking about Easy Pass, because I'm going to make that a condition of approval if my fellow commissioners will go along with that. I find that for all projects, we need to make Easy Pass a condition. So yeah, I really, I didn't have any questions. Your plans are very clear to me. I really am excited about this, and I really can't wait to see it come.
Okay. Well, I echo your sentiments. I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing here. The use of materials, the thoughtfulness, that is wonderful, just in terms of how the units are laid out and the entire layout as well. It really shows you gave it a lot of effort. And I would like to see elevations in the courtyard. I think that would be very helpful to understand what that's going to feel like. And I think it needs to be possibly more, I'm not sure, maybe I misunderstood, but another outdoor kitchen, or at least a grill, some kind of grill on that 3rd floor. Is there any at all at this point? Some eating, outdoor eating areas? In the,
Sky deck?
Can you go to the microphone, please?
We're planning the barbecue / outdoor kitchen area at the sky deck
at
level.
the sky deck? And that's on the 6th,
That's on the top floor, yes.
the top floor?
The 6th floor.
It'd be good to have on both.
Okay.
I don't know, it just seems like people like to eat outdoors. It's a way to bring the community together.
Well, let's call this a Zen garden, though.
Yeah, you know, I'm not sold on the chess set. Anyway, whatever. It's minor. I alluded to my concerns about San Pablo Avenue, but I wanted to also say that I think one of the commercial spaces, it would be wonderful to have a restaurant in there and to have the proper venting and the possibility for an outdoor eating area. It's really great afternoon sun there, and it would be well utilized, so I didn't want to totally discourage you from that. And I have no problem with the extra parking. You made the point that there is, just kind of got double counted there. So I actually think that seems, and you're going to have 2 car sharing pods. That sounds good. Maybe even another would be decent. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
I agree. I think it's a wonderful project and done a great job. I also agree that we should not cut the parking by very much. Maybe at some time in the future, if it's not used, the space could be used for something else, but I think now it's important that there at least be 1 parking place per unit. Other than that, I think it's a great project. And I hope you can get the tax credit financing or whatever you need to do it. And I was curious to know whether parking was one of the requirements that you have to meet to get tax credits.
Tax credit defers to the locality for parking. So if the locality is not requiring 1-to-1, then tax credit won't require it either.
I see. Okay.
One thing I should note, though, is that I'm not sure if it's the case here, but I believe sometimes the funding for affordable housing does not allow unbundling of parking. So I'm not sure if that's true in this case, but our code does have a provision that says if it's required by the funder for low-income housing, then unbundling of the parking is not required.
Perfect.
I was going to ask about the unbundled parking, but so thank you for that.
I read your mind.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I also think that this is a higher quality design than we see from most of the for-profit people that come in here. And I really do like the mix of units. I appreciate that some of the larger units are on the courtyard and are facing the courtyard and have visual contact with the courtyard so that people can have their children in the courtyard and be able to see what's going on down there. But I do agree with Commissioner Gunkel that those units on the east side, if there's a possibility of them also having some kind of visual access to the courtyard, I think that that would be a really good idea. I don't think that the parking should be cut in quarters. I think that people, if we're trying to provide family-friendly housing for people with 3- and 4-unit apartments, that people that are working and have kids and are having, there's a need for some parking spaces and cars. And if it is more convenient and cheaper for people to take the bus because it is in a good location, the car can stay in the garage, but I think that there's a need to have those parking spaces. So I would think that we could find a justification for the number of spaces. I don't think that what you're asking for is excessive on that. In regards to the lobby entry area on MacArthur and San Pablo, I like the amenities that are there, but I would love to see if you could work out a little bit more flexibility so that the club room lounge could be a little bit bigger, because one of the things that I've seen in a lot of multifamily projects that work well is having that community room that's big enough for a big family gathering, birthday party, anniversary, something like that. And this one, you know, the outdoor spaces are wonderful, but our weather is not always wonderful, so it's nice to have a place that's big enough for an extended family or a community gathering meeting or something like that, and it looks like this club room is a little bit tight for that. So if somehow it could be paired with the homework rooms so that those could double up, or, you know, if you could look at ways to make that a little bit more flexible so that it could be expanded if that was something that the community wanted to be having happen. I think that I do think that there is really, I think that part of the reason that you were picked was because you did have such a lot of open space for families. I think that's one of the considerations that went into being chosen for this project, and I really appreciate it. But the materials I appreciate, and keep on going.
I also agree with the other commissioners that this is a really great first pass on this design. What I think would be helpful in your upcoming presentation would be to show the relationship of this project to the other project across the street, the MAS building. I'm just curious to see what your facade will look like, or the landscaping and dog park will look like as it's projected against the other neighboring project. What I liked about this design is similar to what was mentioned here, especially the open space. I like the fact that the design really incorporates breaking up the massing with the overlook and with the sky deck and the terrace. As far as the mix of materials, one of the first things I jotted down was wood, but then it sounds like that's not necessarily in the plans right now. If there's a way to move back to that, I think that will really make this project stand out, and it all depends on budget. But I think that's something that, as a planning commission, we are definitely interested in seeing more of that mixture of wood, concrete with the brick. I mean, that more design diversity. I think the metal panels are great. I'm just concerned that the hardy panels or the hardy lap siding won't add as much visual interest, and it might actually detract from the great product that you have elsewhere. As far as the layout of the family size units, there's a really great mix, as has been commented earlier. I like that we've had a lot of discussion about family-friendly housing or family-friendly units and what makes up a family-friendly unit. And I think that we haven't really reached a conclusion on what is a typical family-friendly unit. Some people prefer to have privacy in terms of having your parents' room separate from the kids' room, and others favor a more communal approach of having all of the rooms open up onto a central gathering space. What I like is that you incorporate both, so people can sort of choose what best suits their parenting style or their family needs. Let's see. As far as the townhouse unit, I'm wondering if you could maybe introduce some additional concepts for that in the future. Right now there are 3 bedrooms upstairs. There's a lone bedroom downstairs. The laundry facility is upstairs. So someone's going to have to carry their laundry up and down the stairs, and that's something I'm sensitive to, living in a 2-story house. So if that's something that you could look at in the future. As far as let's see what else. Upper floor. I wasn't clear on whether there are units that that are ADA accessible. So is that something you can talk about?
All of the units will be visitable. And they will be adaptable to be ADA. And then I believe now the current requirement is that 10% of them are built out handicap accessible, and then 4% will be hearing and visually impaired built out.
Okay, so when you say adaptable, did you mean that it will incorporate universal design principles?
Yes, but universal design is a large and mostly undefined, but kind of generally defined. So, we will have the 5-foot turning radiuses in the kitchen and the bathrooms. There will be blocking behind the toilet and the tub, but not the actual handrail itself. The cabinets will be 36. So that's going to be on a granite, so that's not adjustable. But so most things are, but the cabinets will have a removable front, so that if somebody requests accommodation, we can take out the front of the sink, and it will be a roll under type of situation.
Okay, thank you. So as far as, we have a list of issues to be considered. I was going to go through mine, but do we want to wait till everyone's had their comments and then come back to that? Or as far as bonus points, the questions that were being asked?
I think we were sort of hoping for that now. If we need to go
Okay.
back to it for more staff direction. I think
Okay,
we
so then
can.
I'll go forward with that. So as far as my preference of bonus points in order of most important would be the flexible benefit of the low-income housing, universal design. Oh, where am I? Where is, no, I've got the wrong notes here. I'm going to have to come back to that. Where did I get that? Oh, no, that's correct. Sustainable design. Those are my priority ones. As far as the dog park and the landscaping, I think that the dog park is fine. I think that, we need to possibly make it more accessible to the community. And as far as the unit mix, I'm fine with the unit mix. I think that it's accessible. I would, as I was mentioning earlier, would like to see accessible units, kind of see what that layout looks like and what sorts of materials are going to be used that you were describing. And I think the parking as well is fine the way it is. For the area that's the retail now, I agree with the other commissioners that it's going to be important to include some sort of provisions for a restaurant or eating establishments so that it can activate that area and hopefully address some of the security concerns. And then I think it will help to make that to make this project more incorporated into the community and not so much a gated community that the only folks that are there are the ones that live there, that we actually have people coming from other parts of the city to this location. And those are my comments.
I want to address the bonus points question. I know that was asked by staff. We can identify 50 points right now that we're committing to, and that would include LEED certification at the gold level minimum, alternative energy that would cover 15% of the load. So the first one was 25 points, the second one's 10. Energy efficiency at 10% over the energy code, that's 15%, and that sums up to 50 points right now. And once we are further along in our process, I think we can identify potentially the remainder of the points that would be necessary.
What was the second one again?
That's the alternative energy at 15% of the building's load.
Okay.
Or displacing 15% of the load.
In the form of solar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I'd like to reiterate what everyone else has said. I think it's a very commendable design. A couple of the things that I already mentioned, I think that there's ways to work those unit plans out that do face the courtyard. A lot of market rate condos and apartments nowadays are putting the ranges in the island or peninsula, which could free you up to put the sink on that wall that could potentially be the window wall and move the refrigerator to the side wall. I agree with, so I guess the RFP, this rendering that reflects what was in the RFP, where this appears to be like an Ipe rain screen or something along those lines, is, I think there's a earthiness and a nice quality to it that hardy, siding, painted, smooth, hardy siding doesn't have. And I think moving away from, I think Emeryville's seen a lot of not so great uses of lap siding and hardy siding, where it just sort of, I think it detracts from everything else that you've got going on here. So to be able to use higher quality material and it's not in large masses in general. So I think the cost could be offset a little bit there. I think with looking at the skins, just seeing I think the weakest link in the overall sort of skin of the building is the darker fiber cement panel portions that you're using to kind of divide the, or make changes in the facades. I think it works okay at the elevator towers where you've got the sort of the narrow slit windows, but then it just seems like at a couple of the other portions, that's the least resolved portion of the facades, and I'd like to see some alternatives there. I like the arcade. I'd love to not see that get lost. The corner lobby, I did want, basically the corner lobby or reception area, I just question how many of the residents are going to utilize that as their primary entry, or are they more likely to come around the side and go in directly where the elevator is? And I think, as much as we're trying to activate the street here, the more that they're, coming out that corner, the better. And I get that there are a lot of amenities along the way, and if there's a particular intention to utilize one portion of those amenities, then maybe it will draw them from that elevator over to the reception and out to the corner at San Pablo. But I mean, ideally, I'd love to see the elevator actually over there. But if you can't figure out a way to do that, just some way to open it up more to that corner so that it's not this kind of zigzagging route to get over there that will pretty much prevent most people from taking that path. Yeah, I'd love to see that overlook is such a great amenity, and if I get the idea of having the barbecue on the sky deck area, if that was the term you're using, but I think the overlook would also be a great location for a barbecue and bar. I guess I did, when walking around the site, the one thing I noticed, and the one thing you can sort of see from this aerial view, is at the southeast corner there is an existing two-story, I think, flats, apartment building, I'm not quite sure. And I think it's just going to be key to really make sure that, I mean, it's nice that it's the Zen garden back there on that upper level, the second floor level there, but, and I see that there's some trees that are called out as sort of screening trees, but it did seem like there were a good amount of windows on that side of the house, and just really taking it, being conscientious of people not being in the Zen garden staring straight into somebody's bedroom or whatever is right there.
Yeah, we've been in conversation with both the owner and the renter who lives at that location. And pending our resolution with fire and the egress on the podium, this strip here in between, we're hoping to be entirely vegetated. Actually, some of our swales or our C3 processing will be there, so it'll be very well planted. And then the podium or the garage level is actually the 22 feet structure. So if we put the house, next to the elevation, then they're of similar height before you get to the Zen garden. So person on the Zen garden will actually be looking at the roof.
Down at the roof,
of the adjacent building.
Okay.
Just did a great job.
Yeah, and just you know, some working out the play structures and things like that in the courtyard. It's great that you've got some sort of adult spaces. I love the way that the interplay between the overlook and the courtyard. It seems like the courtyard's primarily for kids and, you know, families. But just, you know, trying to figure out a way to one, make sure that, you know, I too don't know that the chessboard is something that actually gets utilized that often, but then also making sure that the play equipment is not of materials or design that detract from the overall experience, and that they're not too plasticky. I mean, there are a lot of more high quality play structures nowadays, and just making sure to utilize those. That's it.
Can I make one more comment? Somebody brought up the fact that it might be nice to have a larger sort of assembly space. And looking at the plan on the second floor, it appears the volume for the 2 stories high for that entire corner where the leasing office and amenities are, and that part of it could be brought down to 1 story high, and in the area above it you could put a larger room that could be used for parties or events.
At the second level.
I mean, just a thought.
So I also want to echo, you know, I know this will be redundant, but I just want to echo all the positive things that have been said here. I think you have done a really good job. This is a really good proposal before us. I was just telling the staff the other day that from the very beginning, I felt like this was the strongest proposal, and that is even more evident now for this site. I think you've done a really great job with the outdoor spaces. There's a lot of them, and they serve a lot of different purposes, and I think that those are really going to be an amenity for the project. I do that you've sort of made my job easy tonight. I had a couple of big item comments that have already been addressed. So I know we're not really supposed to take into consideration the economics of a project, but I know that projects of this nature, affordable housing projects, the financing can be really difficult, and it's a little bit like puzzle pieces. But so you've already addressed my 2 biggest things, which are, one, I want to reiterate Commissioner Keller's comments about the Easy Pass program. You said you were already looking into that, so that's encouraging. I would also second the notion of requiring that. I think this is, if there's no other project that could really benefit from that program, it's this one. I mean, this is you know, lower income residents on a major transit corridor. It's prime for that type of program, and AC Transit does offer amazing discounts through that program. So, and then the other thing is, I have some concerns about the viability of the commercial space as a space for retail, and those are kind of twofold. First is just kind of the shape of it. While I think it wouldn't be impossible to, design the interior improvements for that space, I was trying to kind of do it in my head, and there are some challenges. So I think, if you have an opportunity to make that space any more rectilinear, I think that would probably benefit the space. And also, I'm just also concerned about it as a viable space for retail. There's not a lot of other retail establishments of that size in this, close proximity to this. I do think as a restaurant space, it makes more sense. There are some restaurants, and there are starting to be more. There's, directly across the street is Lane Splitter, and down the street you have B-Side Barbecue. So there are some really quality restaurants in this location. So I would support requiring the proper shaft for ventilation for a full-service restaurant in that location, because I think that's going to be the most viable use there. And then, in addition, I just have a few other little things. Let's see. The parking, I really can appreciate the sort of the perfect storm of parking reductions that made your requirement really low. I do think that the provided parking seems high to me. It's, there are 87 units, so at 1 per unit, you still got 28 spaces over. So I think more in the neighborhood of 100 spaces would be more appropriate. That would still give you 13 space. They still give you 1 per unit and 13 spaces extra for the retail. And there is a lot of on-street parking here on San Pablo and on the side streets, which I think patrons of that commercial space will probably utilize a lot. As far as the dog run, I'm sort of sympathetic to the next door property owner. I think if I lived that close to it, I'm not sure that I would want a dog run there. So I'll just sort of say that and leave it to you to have discussions with that owner. I'm sympathetic to a point, but we also need to do something there that will look good and be an amenity for the community. So. I'm not sure what else that is, but I heard some things that were ruled out that I sort of thought were good ideas as well. So, we'll give you that guidance as you move forward. And then just a couple other things. So I think one of the important goals here is to. I hate the word activate, but I will say put more activity on the street. And I have just a couple of concerns about how this project and how the residents of the project will interact with the area, with the community outside of the project. I think, and Commissioner Gunkel really started to touch on that when he was talking about the elevator, and I would really actually support moving the elevator closer to the lobby. But in addition to that, I'm actually more concerned about the other elevator, which is at the other end of the garage, and which would allow direct access into the building without having to interact with anything really. So I would really like to see that elevator. I would really like to see both of the elevators in the lobby. I hadn't initially thought about moving the one elevator closer to the reception area, but I think that's a great idea. And just looking at the plans, there might be some space to do it. I'm not sure. I don't know what IDF stands for, but there's a small IDF closet or something that might be.
Sean, can I interject just something in that thought? Think of you're living in there and you living at the opposite corner of the complex on the 6th floor, and you're carrying armloads of groceries. Wouldn't that other elevator on that side be more convenient? Or if you've gone to IKEA or something like that, I would hate the idea of having to go all the way from that corner up and then all the way across to the other side of the building. I think it's a little more functional of reality. just my suggestion. I don't want you to change your thing if you don't believe it. That's just something I feel that.
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, I've always wished at where I live that I was forced to go down onto the street to enter my building, because I think it really detracts from the street life, actually.
Yeah.
And then to that end as well, I'd like to see on the townhome units that face MacArthur. I'd really like to see the corridor on the backside of those units eliminated, so that the access from the units was just from the front door and not from the rear. I think that's really important. That's something these comments are actually very similar to comments I'm going to give to the projects that we will review later on tonight. So it is something I feel really strongly about. So I will just conclude there.
So I'd just like to add a couple other things. You're up to 50 points, it sounds like, which is really quick and really good. And I'm looking at your list here, or the list here that's provided to us. And I've circled quite a few of things that I already see in the project, such as public improvements. I mean, I think this project is a public improvement just being this project. The transit, the easy pass for the transit demand management. If this isn't family-friendly housing, I don't know what we could do to make family-friendly housing. Public art, it's a neighborhood center, it's universal design. So I would think you could probably hit every point on this list at one point or another, so I don't know that we're going to have a lot of difficulty coming up with 90 points to give you the height bonus that you need on this, but that's just my feeling as a commissioner. And then as the points that we're asked to look at, the issues to be considered, the bonus points we just went through. I feel the dog park is fine. I think the plant palette is good. I just think and I think we have the mandate that it needs to be bay-friendly. It needs to be durable. When our tour of what we did through a lot of the affordable housing projects, landscaping takes a beating. and in some places, it ceased to exist. I can't remember the project where we walked up the stairs and there were planter boxes at each landing that were empty. So it's not only important to put it as a concept, but make it something that's going to survive a family-friendly environment. So somehow protect them. The unit mix, as we discussed, is yes, and I definitely think what you're doing is fine in parking for if we do a restaurant, they're going to need some kind of parking for employees and other things. So I think knock it down a little bit, put in some bike lockers, and I think you're there.
My one other comment is that I appreciate the efforts that you seem to be making to involve the neighbors and talk to the neighbors and talk to the community. That's really, really important.
Any other comments? All right, well, thank you.
We take a break.
Yeah, yes, and so yes, and I would, so I'm going to suggest that we take a short 5-minute break before we continue.